Hello. ഇതിന്റെ ഇന്റർനാഷണൽ പീസ് എന്നാണ് ഫ്രണ്ട് വരുന്നത്. So I am ready. Hello. Hello, everybody. Hello. 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 Hello, everybody. Hello. Yoshi.
Hello, sir. You're audible, right?
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay. Let us start the program. Let us start the program. Hello, Varsha. No, no. You unmute it. I will tell them this message. Oh, sir. Is it correct? You got it? Hello, Saida. Hello? Saida? Okay, okay. And Varsha?
Yes, I'm here. Hi. Yes.
Okay. Rajini Bakshi, have you joined? Rajini? Okay. She will join later. So, friends, let us start the day from Delhi. Of course, we had the inaugural session and another session from US. And this session, we will focus on human rights and peace and related issues. And we have 5 speakers, and we will go up to 11 o'clock with a presentation and a question answer session. Our first speaker is Dr. Saida Hamid. I am extremely happy that Saida ji has joined us today. She's a very busy person and a great follower of Gandhi and association with Gandhi's ideals in many ways, and nationally and internationally, part of many, many organizations. One special position she held was as a member of the Planning Commission of India, the top planning body in the country it was. And Saidaji, I am very happy that you could spare time for this program. And may I now invite you to speak. You will be focusing or you will be addressing on the issue of Gandhi and women empowerment, how that situation is today and how we shall look forward and what was Gandhi's message for us. Saidaji.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor George Matthews. We have a very long-standing fellow travelers through many, many decades now. So it's an honor that you asked me to become part of this International Peace Conference 2020. I did come in for a little while at 7 o'clock in the morning to attend part of the inaugural session. And so I get a drift of what this conference is about, although I have some very serious family illness, so I may not be able to stay very long. But in any case, I will focus on Gandhi and women. I think the literature on Gandhi and women, there is huge amounts of literature which people, especially the people around this on this virtual platform, are well aware of. They've read it and over again. But I think we need to recapitulate a few things which I just want to present to you. One is that Gandhi believed in the concept of Ardhanarishwara. And he expressed it by saying that, and I'm just quoting from him, that I have mentally become a woman. In this manner, I can steal into her heart. He was referring to his wife, Kasturba. And let me also say that all the great apostles of all religions have essentially been feminists. I can only speak for Islam because I have a little bit, I'm a student of Islamic studies, and I understand and I read and I practice the teachings of the Quran. There was no greater feminist than Prophet Muhammad. And Gandhi had deep understanding for what Islam really meant, peace and submission, and women, respect for women, and belief in the efficacy of women's empowerment was intrinsic to Islam, regardless of all the anti-gender epithets applied to it. And Gandhi was a great believer in it. So he said, and I quote again, most of what I'll quote will be from Young India. And when I say this because Gandhi to me is, like an apostle. And we have apostles in all religions. And there I feel the essence of all religions is respect, regard, and belief in the empowerment of women. And we can have a huge discussion on that. But I quote from Young India, I could not steal into my wife's heart until I decided to treat her differently than I used to. So I restored to her all her rights by dispossessing myself of my so-called rights as her husband. Now, these lines, my so-called rights as a husband. This has a huge meaning, right from cleaning the chamber pots of people who use the toilets, first asking his wife to clean it, but when she hesitated, cleaning it, and then, in a sense, giving her a personal example. If she wanted to follow, she could follow it. If she didn't want to, she was free not to. So all his belief in empowerment of women began in his heart. In his heart, in his soul, in his deep understanding of, the power of women. And then he goes on to say again in Young India, of all the evils for which man is responsible, none is so degrading, so shocking, or so brutal as his abuse of the better half of humanity, the female sex, not the weaker sex, quote unquote, from Young India. Not the weaker sex, it is the nobler of the two. And then he goes on to say, woman, I hold, is the personification of self-sacrifice. Now remember, he's talking 100 years ago. Woman, I hold, is a personification of self-sacrifice, but unfortunately, she does not realize what a tremendous advantage she has over man. And he concludes this by saying, as Tolstoy used to say, they are laboring under the hypnotic influence of man. So his whole mission was to bring women to the fore of the freedom struggle. And it is the historical role of women in the freedom movement, which is the gift of Gandhi. There were other leaders, there were other people who brought women in, but none with the kind of force that Gandhi brought. And that is evident in the participation of women in the Prabhat Pheris that we read about. And these women were there regardless of whether they were Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs. We have examples of people like Rehana Tayyabji, the daughter of Abbas Tayyabji, who was a companion of Gandhi, who had a beautiful singing voice and who used to sing hymns and bhajans to Gandhi. Miraben, whose the story of Miraben has been the subject of many books and epic films on Gandhi. Sushila Nair, and we all know the role of Sushila Nair, who was a freedom fighter, a companion of Gandhi, and a great symbol of the kind of force with which she brought women at the time that people came from the other side of the border and were homeless in the Sharnarthi camps. And that there, with the inspiration of Gandhi, I remember a personal incident which I would like to share with you. It's personal because it was narrated to me by the person herself. And her name was Anis Kidwai. Anis Kidwai her husband was killed by the marauders. He was a DC of, I think, Dehradun or somewhere at that time, killed by the marauders, and she became a widow at the age of 26. And she went to Gandhi and she said she was completely broken and totally, in a sense, completely helpless. What would she do now at that stage in her life? And Gandhi said, the very people who killed your husband, they have been rendered homeless and they've come across from the other side of the border, and now they're in the Sharnarthi camp in the Old Fort. So your medicine your cure is to go and work with those very people. So he used to challenge, the young widow had nothing but anger and huge amounts of anguish at what had happened, but he threw her into the flames of the same kind of atmosphere. And then from there, she emerged and became one of Gandhi's most important. So she was a good friend of our family, and I remember her relating this incident to me. So Gandhi also, another little note that I want to share with you, which again from Young India, is that Gandhi wrote, woman is the companion of man gifted with equal mental capacity. If by strength is meant mental power, woman is immeasurably man superior. If non-violence is the law of our being, woman is immeasurably man superior. And we all speak and we all propagate the fact that women's intervention in the peace process is something that is the only thing which will pull us back from this brink of disaster in which the world is standing. And we have all, and I see friends here in the gallery view who have spent their whole life in this struggle. And in that, where women have taken the lead, whether it is in anywhere in the world, whether it is the United States, whether it's South Asia, particularly in South Asian countries about which I know a little more, whether it's Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, India, Afghanistan, it's women who have come forward in this peace process. And when women take the lead in the peace process, that is where, you know, the iceberg starts melting. And this is what Gandhi saw, and this is what Gandhi stood for. I also, when I was preparing to speak on the invitation of my friend Professor George Matthews, I went back to a memorial lecture I had given in 1997 in the Gandhi Peace Foundation, and the title of that lecture was Gandhi Ji or Mahilayen. The very same concept that has been being presented before this distinguished audience. And it was amazing how little has changed. This was 1997. I had just started my term as a member of the National Commission for Women. And I was asked to do this, and I spoke about Gandhi, his Ardhanarishwara concept, his saying that I have become a woman, and that all those lessons that we derived from Young India. And then I transposed it on the current reality. And in this lecture, in which I'm holding in my hand here from Gandhi Peace Foundation, I quoted two instances of brutal violence against women. One had happened in Rajasthan in a student hostel, a case of gang rape, and the other had happened in Bhim, in a place in a monastery, in a religious place where this heinous crime had taken place. It was called Bheenmal. Yes, now I remember it was called Bheenmal. And it was like a deja vu for me when I thought, here we are at this International Peace Conference 2020, talking about Gandhi and talking about what lessons Gandhi taught us about the power of women, about the role of women, again, he spoke against all the violence that occurs in the societal norms, whether it's dowry, whether it's child marriage, whether it's bride burning, every single violence against women, lack of equal opportunities. Young India is full of that. And his biographies are also filled of that. But whatever it is, how little things change. So have we really imbibed, the teachings of Gandhi? And at this time, I think about Charles Dickens in A Tale of Two Cities, when he talked about this was the best of times and the worst of times. We all know this is a very famous quotation from Charles Dickens. I don't know whether we can even say today that this was the best of times and the worst of times, because all of what Gandhi has taught, how is it playing out in the theater of South Asia and everywhere else in the world? We women are part of this great movement called 1 billion rising, where 1 billion people across the world are urged to stand regardless of religion, regardless of sex, regardless of sexual orientation, caste, class, for women and against violence against women. And today, as I speak, we are grappling with the most atrocious, unspeakable violence against women, which has happened in our very backyard. And I'm talking of the violence of Hathras. I'm talking of the violence of Balrampur. I'm talking of the violence in Azamgarh, just within a matter of 3 days. So today, Peace Conference 2020, celebrating Gandhi, celebrating Gandhi's ideals, commemorating Gandhi, remembering Gandhi, and so many distinguished speakers are going to be, have already spoken, and Professor George Matthews is a great believer. In fact, like Professor George Matthews, my great grandfather, who 120 years ago was the first feminist poet of this country, and who has heard of the feminist, the great feminist women's empowerment that he spoke about in his poetry. And Gandhi wrote about him that he said, if any language of the world, if any language is the language of my country, it is the language of the poetry of Altaf Hussain Hali. Altaf Hussain Hali was the name of the man who spoke of the best of feminist poetry came from his pen, and Gandhi read it, Gandhi watched it, and Gandhi wrote about it as the best instance of the language of this country. So I was talking about Professor Matthews' commitment to Gandhi. I was talking about this conference, which is commemorating Gandhi, and I was talking of the ground reality. What are we looking at for ourselves, and our life is very much more or less more or less over. But what kind of a world are we leaving for the future generations? Because it's whether it's Gandhi or whether it's Maulana Azad, whether it is Jawaharlal Nehru, whether it is all the great thinkers and freedom fighters, every philosophy that has been explicated has been speaking about women, but what is rolling on the ground is an unabated spate of violence. So I think in this conference, and this is the last thing I'll say, in this conference, we need to introspect and need to really introspect, not just in a whole bunch of words, but really introspect on how we Indians, we South Asians, and we global citizens, because this world after Corona has become, extremely, an extremely close, and it has proven that disease or anything for that matter has no borders and no boundaries. So that universalism then brings us to Gandhi's concept. We must introspect on it, and we have to come out with a very clear roadmap for the future. I'll end here. Thank you very much. Over to you, Professor Matthews.
Thank you very much, Saidaji. What an inspiring presentation. And we have to seriously introspect how we can counter the present situation, which is deteriorating day by day. It is, as you concluded by saying, it is very disturbing. And Are we totally forgetting Gandhi? Are we totally forgetting his philosophy and what he stood for? The beautiful quotes you gave today in the morning, this session on Gandhi's approach, Gandhi's attitude, Gandhi's understanding of our common life, men, women, and it is a big challenge before us. I understand you have to leave within an hour or so, or soon.
Yeah, hour. Yeah.
Yeah. So if there are some questions, should I take it now or little
No,
later?
we can take them later. We'll take them later. Let's
Because
just
I was planning to take the questions at the end of all the
yeah, yeah. Please,
presentation.
please, please. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. May I now invite Dr. Varsha Das. Uh, Varsha, you are here? Hello? Varshadi?
Yes, 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 I'm very much here.
Oh, yes, I cannot see you. Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me? But
Ah,
because it
now you have.
against
Yes,
ne-
yes, yes.
okay, good.
We can hear. We can hear.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
As all of you know, Varshaji was the director of Gandhi National Museum and a dedicated Gandhian. And for years and years, we are working together. And what an inspiration for all of us in the Institute of Social Sciences. Whenever I say something, let us do on Gandhi, she will be always with us. And thank you very much for joining us today. And you have 15 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. George, for giving me this opportunity to share some of my learnings from Gandhiji. Uh, well, the my topic is the Gandhian perspective of religion and peace. That's the topic you have given me.
Yes, yes.
So, the purpose of religion is to lead people towards peaceful life. Gandhiji believed that true religion is, in fact, identical with morality, ethics, and compassion. Religion is no religion if it became mechanical or mere ritual. In Hind Swaraj, Gandhiji has said that religions are different roads converging to the same point. What does it matter that we take different roads so long as we reach the same goal? Wherein is the cause for quarreling? Bhagavad Gita had become Gandhiji's dictionary of daily reference. He turned to it for solace and guidance whenever he found himself confronted by doubts and difficulties, trials and troubles. It became his infallible guide of conduct. Gandhiji has mentioned in his autobiography, and I quote him here: I understood more clearly in the light of the Gita teaching the implication of the word trustee. I understood the Gita teaching of non possession to mean that those who desired salvation should act like trustees who, though having control over great possessions, regard not an iota of them as his own. It became clear to me as daylight that non possession, that is aparigraha, and equability, that is samabhava, presupposed a change of heart, a change of attitude. Unquote. So, such an insight shows that Gandhiji was inspired by the books which made a person better human being, where a person is thinking about others' well being as well. Such an attitude towards religion would certainly lead to peaceful coexistence. Gandhiji has said that not to believe in the possibility of permanent peace is to disbelieve in the godliness of human nature. And further, he says that my experience, daily growing stronger and richer, tells me that there is no peace for individuals or for nations without practicing truth and non-violence to the uttermost extent possible for men. The policy of retaliation has never succeeded. Unquote. At another place, Gandhiji gives an example of a family. When a father slaps his delinquent child, the latter does not think of retaliating. He obeys his father not because of the deterrent effect of the slap, but because of the offended love which he senses behind it. That, in Gandhiji's opinion, is an epitome of the way in which society is or should be governed. He further says that what is true of the family must be true of society, which is but a larger family. What I understood from Gandhiji's perspective of religion is that it teaches moral and ethical way of living harmoniously in the society. It has no miracles or superstitions. It does not divide people of different culture, language, or even religion because it recognizes fundamental goodness in all. The purpose of understanding religious philosophy is for its application in one's life for self improvement. It is a lifelong process. Gandhiji has spoken about his own continuous evolution. I would now like to talk about Gandhiji's favorite devotional song, Vaishnavajan, which was written by Narsi Mehta in the 15th century saint poet of Gujarat. Uh, its first two lines are Vaishnava Janato tene kahiye je peed parai jane re पर दुखे उपकार करे तोए मन अभिमान न आने रे, which means that a person who understands the pain of others is known as a Vaishnava. He helps others who are suffering but never boasts about it. The word Vaishnava literally means a devotee of Lord Vishnu. And in each line of this poem, Narsi Mehta defines a true Vaishnava. So these are basically the qualities of a good human being. This song was often sung during the morning and evening prayers at the ashram. A number of outsiders used to visit Gandhiji at the Phoenix settlement in South Africa. One of them was Joseph Royappan. He was a Christian and was good at music. He loved singing Vaishnavajan song. And as written by Gandhiji in his letter to one of his nephews in, uh, in September 1930, he says that once, instead of Vaishnavajana, Royappan sang Christianajana, and all joined him instantly. I could see Joseph's joy knew no bounds. So, a good human being can be of any religion from any part of the world. In the same letter, Gandhiji also mentioned, and again I quote Gandhiji, that late Daud Seth's son, late Hussein, often stayed at the ashram. He used to join the prayers quite enthusiastically. In a very sweet, melodious voice, accompanied by an organ, he used to sing, Ye Bahare Bag Duniya Chand Rose. This spring in the garden of the world is but for a few days. We all learned to sing that devotional song, and it was often included in the prayers. It has been recorded by the historians that just as Joseph Royappan had replaced Vaishnava Jana with Christian Jana, Imam Sahib had replaced it with Muslim Jana. Gandhiji raised a pertinent question in his letter to his nephew that why do we need so many religions? We know that there are many religions. There is only one soul, but there are innumerable human bodies. Masses of human bodies cannot be avoided even if you want to. Just like in the tree, there is only one root of religion, but its leaves are innumerable. So Gandhiji always explained religion to his family and family members and ashramites, but he never forced it on anyone. I think a person who respects others is a true teacher of religion and peace. 13th century Buddhist sage from Japan, Nichiren Daishonin, said that when you bow in front of the mirror, the image bows back to you. So I think this correlation of religion and peace is mutual respect, live in harmony, and live happily. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Varshaji. And how much important is it today when we are all fighting in the name of religion? And as you correctly said, why are we quarreling? Why can't we
Absolutely.
have peace? And are we today, you raised the idea trustees. Do we
Yes,
have a trusteeship in our mind?
never.
And instead of trustees, we are all enemies. That is the real situation you explained, which is very contextual, highly relevant for now.
But that is
Um,
what Gandhiji said, and I think we need to remember that and imbibe that. That is the only
Absolutely.
way for peace. Yeah.
And we have to take social action towards that. Our next speaker is Rajini Bakshi. I understand that she has to leave at 10:40, but we have enough time to hear Rajini Bakshi. Rajini is a well-known author and writer. Um Her very famous book is Bapu Kutti, Bapu Kutti, a wonderful book about Gandhiji. And she is the founder and and curator of Ahimsa Conversations. Her terminology always she uses is Ahimsa. And it is a YouTube channel. And may I now invite Rajini Bakshi to give your presentation. Rajini.
Thank you so much, Georgie. God bless you for having us all together and, bringing us all together. My greetings to Saida ji. So good to see you after such a long time. And also to Varsha ji. So I had suggested that perhaps I could speak on freedom from resentment as the essence of ahimsa.
Correct.
And I suggested this because I realized that, these days, we, all of us, are facing the challenge firstly within ourselves. Because I think the scale and the nature of the problem outside we know, and all of you have so starkly, highlighted again what we are up against. Um, but I would like to focus today a little bit on the internal challenge that we are facing, those of us who want peace. Because I have seen that, I can tell you in myself, firstly, let me confess, I am always noticing that there is a great danger that I will end up hating the hater. Because when you see the enormity of the animosity and the intensity of the poisonous nature with that somebody is experiencing and that they are expressing, whether it is on a WhatsApp group or for that matter actually in a family gathering. So now instinctively, well, at least in the sense that my instincts are very much shaped by the influence of Gandhiji, I know that hating the hater will only make the situation worse. But what do you do? Where do you go from there? How do you change this? How do you cope with the challenge that is presented by the by ourselves being kind of our tolerance is also being pushed to the edge. So I want to share with you that one way in which I'm doing therapy for myself is that I've been revisiting that famous moment where Gandhiji is thrown off the train. Okay. Because I feel very much like all of us who want peace and brotherhood and non-violence, somehow I feel like we are, that whole mindset is experiencing what I call a thrown off the train moment just now. And I think it's global. Across the world, we are having this. And so I've been rereading that part of the autobiography, and I find it very, very helpful. So the first thing that I feel maybe we can learn from that is that despite repeated experiences of being ill-treated by white people, because just before Gandhiji went to South Africa, he had quite a traumatic encounter with the British resident in Rajkot, which shook him quite badly actually, because without reason, that man was rude to him and had him physically removed from his office. So the experience of humiliation was not new on that night when he was thrown off that train. In addition, it doesn't end with that being thrown off the train. The next day, Gandhiji, when he reaches well, actually it's 2 days later, because that night he waits 24 hours for the next train to come by. And finally, he reaches the station where he was destined, and he has to go by horse carriage onwards. And in that journey also, there is a very traumatic experience. In fact, in that case also, he is physically manhandled. Now, here's what I am reading that made this a historical incident. One, that somehow Gandhiji was able to depersonalize it. If you will forgive me, in Bombay language, in Bombay film language, we have a very evocative phrase. It says, "Ke dil pe mat le yaar." Now, this is to most people who want very good progressive social change find this very offensive, because we think we have been taught politically, we have been taught to believe that only if we stay angry and only if we really hate what the other side is doing, only then we'll have the energy to work for positive change. But Gandhi has proved otherwise, and I think he did it. This is my guess. I mean, we need to hear from maybe psychologists and psychoanalysts what was the crux. So he immediately to nahi, but in that long cold night, by the way, it was bitter cold, and he is so upset by the whole incident. So I really want to emphasize how terrible that moment was for him. He can't even work up the courage to ask for his suitcase back, because the station master has taken away his luggage, and his overcoat was in the main luggage. He only had his little handbag with him. He's not even able to work up the courage, because he's afraid कि अब मैंने कोट मांग लिया तो वो फिर मेरी बेइज्जती ना कर दे. How is he able to depersonalize this? And instead of thinking of it as, oh, this has happened to me, I am traumatized, I will now bear this psychological scar for the rest of my life, he sees it in its widest context. He says, no, the problem is not that white man who had me thrown off the train. The problem is color prejudice itself. And we must all fight to change that. And this desire for the larger change, for what would make a good society, is the exact opposite of some wrong was done to me and I must settle that score. It's the exact opposite of that. And this is the energy also that you find in Baba Sahab. I must confess that I am not a serious student. I know Baba Sahab through friends who are helping me to understand his work. So I confess, and I put that in the public domain, that I have no right to talk about Baba Sahab's work. But I know this much with confidence, that his central preoccupation is what will make a good society. Not just what will bring uplift for Dalits and any other sections of society, but what on the whole will make for a good society. And there I feel the most important thing to learn from Gandhiji is never ever to lose the confidence that the larger effort will someday bear fruit. See, nothing could be, I mean, that I'm moving away now from the train incident. I'll rush to the end of his life. If you see the last 10 months of his life, when he's receiving bags and bags full of hate mail, you don't think that this was, hate mail or trolls were invented yesterday because of social media. At a time when people had to take pen to paper and find a stamp and put a letter in the post box, thousands of people were sending him hate mail. Actually, some of the letters said drop dead. There was that much hatred coming towards him. So much so that on his last birthday, he says in the prayer meeting that evening on 2nd October, that now you all pray that I should be liberated from this body. Bahut ho gaya. This is from the man who had once said that he would like to be 125 years old because his work is so widespread. He needs that much time. Now, so I'm giving you the graphic detail of the extent of how shattered he was by what was happening around him, and we all know what was happening around him, right? The chaos, the genocide of Pakistan on both sides. He does not lose he does not lose hope that non-violence is still the way. I mean, and he says it repeatedly, my experiment has failed. I realize now, Gandhiji says that people never followed me in non-violence. The only thing Indians were interested in was passive resistance. And he has always said that passive resistance is not at all non-violence, because he says passive resistance is what somebody who doesn't have the capacity for violence does as a substitute and will quickly shift to violence the moment they have a chance. So he says that's all people agreed towards. They didn't follow me in non-violence. And still, in that moment of utter and complete personal despair, he is able to have the confidence that in the long run, non-violence, it will win. And he has been more than validated. I think I'm running out of time. So I'll wind up by saying that in the last 70 years, more has been done to develop the ideal, the practice, and multifarious applications of the basic concept of nonviolence in many different ways. The idea of it's a term that Gandhiji didn't even use, not in these words, though he meant it in different ways. He talked about it. Restorative justice. And the more the crimes and the brutality around us grows, those of us who want to set it right will have to work harder to understand what is restorative justice. because many of the things that are happening now, I believe, are a consequence of the times we live in. It's not about ideology. It's not even sometimes about the visible caste and religion group, etc. I think something is happening in our times. People have been pushed to the edge. So there's a like an epidemic of the worst of our capabilities coming to the surface. What the Buddhists so beautifully call the afflictive emotions. And it's true that the only answer eventually is that we all find small, medium, gigantic ways of it's a process. Non-violence is a process. It's never going to be a destination, and the work is never going to be done. So since I'm in Bombay, I'm allowed to do this. It has to be lage raho. Munna bhai lage raho, George bhai lage raho, Saida man. And the more we are able to do this without feeling resentment towards the people who are doing such disturbing things, the better energized we will be. That's my hope. And thank you so much again, George, for inviting me, and greetings to all. Of
Thank
course,
you.
there's time. We can have questions if there's any questions.
Thank you, Rajni. And since you have to go immediately, any questions now? Any questions now to Rajni? Because we were hoping that the questions will come at the end. But if there are any questions, I think a system, I don't know how that will work now. Okay, Rajni, I am very, very happy that we could listen to you. And as you said, never ever lose the confidence that the larger effort will bring results. Let us be optimistic. And all what you said about Gandhi, his life and his mission.
George,
was
can I have
very-
can I have a last kind of, going away one liner? Because pessimism is for better times.
Pessimism?
Pessimism is for better times. Things are so bad that we don't have the
Uh-huh.
luxury. We don't have the luxury to be
Yes.
pessimistic. And so we must, magnify and glorify every single glimmer of light.
Right. That's true. But non-violence is still the way.
Of course. No, it's the only way. In fact, if I may, Mohan Hirabhai Hiralal was last week's speaker in Ahimsa Conversations, which is a series that I'm doing on YouTube. And his Ahimsa conversation ends on a very beautiful note. He says, oh, the debate between violence and non-violence was settled long ago. That debate is over. Non-violence is the only way. He says the only thing we are discussing now is the how of it in different and specific situations. The only thing we are debating is how to apply and in what ways we have to calibrate it and adjust it and reconfigure it to suit specific situations. That's the only debate.
Okay, thank you very much, and
Thank you so
we'll
much.
continue.
Thank you, and I apologize.
Okay.
But I
you
made a
very much.
promise to some other friends here.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Namaskar, Saida ji. Namaskar, Varsha ji.
Okay. May I now invite Shri VTV Damodaran. Damodaran is from Abu Dhabi and president of Gandhi Sahitya Vedi. And he established that Gandhi Sahitya Vedi in Abu Dhabi. And he is a socio-cultural and humanitarian activist and winner of several awards for fighting for this cause which we are debating today. May I now invite VTV Damodaran, and he will be speaking on socio-cultural and humanitarian issues and Gandhi and issues in Gulf countries. Gandhi in Gulf countries. Damodaran?
Yes. Good morning.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Gandhi was inevitable. If humanity is to progress, Gandhi is inescapable. He lived, thought, and acted inspired by the vision of humanity, evolving towards a world of peace and harmony. We may ignore Gandhi at our own risk, said Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dear friends, I feel privileged and honored to have been invited to speak on this august function. The International Day of Nonviolence is an occasion to disseminate the message of nonviolence through education and public awareness. I am VTV Damodaran, hailing from India, blessed by the birth of Mahatma Gandhi, which upholds the great principles of unity in diversity. More than 2 decades, I have been a non-resident Indian living in the United Arab Emirates, the land of tolerance of His Highness Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan. Payyanur is my birthplace, known as the Second Bardoli, which was contributed hundreds of great patriots to the freedom struggle movement of India. On this auspicious occasion of the 151st birth anniversary celebrations of Mahatma Gandhi, International Day of Non-Violence, I wish to share my humble experience in promoting the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi in this part of the world. 10 years ago, with the support of some of the like-minded friends, I had formed an independent forum called Gandhi Sahitya Vedi. It's a Gandhi Cultural Forum in Abu Dhabi. The very purpose of the forum was to inculcate the teachings of Gandhiji among the younger generations by targeting the various Indian schools in and around Abu Dhabi with limited resources of money and facilities available to us. We managed to conduct various cultural programs on 2nd October and 30th January every year for the benefit of children from various schools in Abu Dhabi with the support of the Embassy of India, local registered and non-registered organizations and philanthropists. The Embassy in Abu Dhabi and all the incumbent ambassadors have been providing me all the support and guidance to promote Gandhian philosophy. United Arab Emirates and its vice rulers believe in equality, love, peace, and tolerance, who recognized Gandhian teachings and have shown very positive attitude towards Mahatmaji and the people of India. In commemoration of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi and the birth centenary of His Highness Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Nahyan, the father of the UAE government initiated lots of cultural activities in the whole Emirates. The life and work of Mahatma Gandhi and the founding father of the UAE, Sheikh Zayed, were celebrated by the soft launch of a digital museum last year. The museum attracted thousands of people from different nations. The museum's interactive digital control content showcased rare photos, videos, and objects representing the life and works of the philosophies of both renowned leaders. The digital exhibition reaffirmed the historical ties and shared the values of peace, tolerance, and sustainability between the UAE and India. both Mahatma Gandhi and Sheikh Zayed impacted innumerable human lives through their vision and leadership, adding that the museum will be a reflection of similarities they shared, the influence they wielded, and the changes they brought about the world. My long cherished dream of installing the statue of Mahatma Gandhi at the main entrance of the prestigious building of the India Social and Cultural Center in Abu Dhabi, one of the biggest Indian social cultural centers outside India, was fulfilled on 1st of February 2018 when His Excellency Navdeep Singh Suri, the then Ambassador of India, unveiled the statue in the presence of thousands of people. This was the first time in the history of the United Arab Emirates a statue of Mahatma Gandhi was installed. It has become a common practice now that all distinguished guests and ministers visiting Abu Dhabi to pay homage to Mahatma Ji by offering their floral tributes. On 4th of December, I remember, on 4th of December 2018, our former Foreign Minister of India, our beloved late Mrs. Sushma Swaraj, visited Abu Dhabi and paid a floral tribute on the statue of Mahatma Ji and commented, I have seen hundreds of statues of Mahatma Ji the world over, but the one installed here is so unique that instilled the real spirit. Subsequently, I brought a charka, the spinning wheel, one of the symbols of Indian independence movement, and installed at the entrance of the Embassy of India on 26th of January last year, 2019. And during the week-long program organized by the UAE in connection with the Year of Tolerance last year, the Foreign Minister of the UAE, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, visited our Indian pavilion. When he saw the charka, he overwhelmed with joy and commented, "Oh, our Gandhi." Similarly, a few years ago, one of the distinguished guests, a UAE national, who was our chief guest at the Gandhi Jayanti Day in our embassy, said she had read the stories of Gandhi at her very younger age. On ethical and behavioral part, Gandhism has much significance today because society is witnessing the degradation of values. Gandhian virtues of self-control is much needed in a materialistic world driven by the desire to achieve and acquire more. Social values have degraded to such an extent that people do not hesitate to kill someone for the gratification of their own needs. Respect for women is one of the major ideas of Gandhian philosophy, and the world is witnessing the increased level of violence against women. Gandhian dream of a safe country necessitates safety for women, and that will come from the virtue of self-control. Adding more to the list of moral qualities of Gandhiji are punctuality, duty boundness, and honesty, etc. And all these have to be the essence of administration for good governance and perfect service delivery to the last person standing in the queue as proposed by the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi. The name of Mahatma Gandhi transcends the boundaries of race, religion, and nationalities. Gandhiji preached non-violent protests, tolerance, and peaceful coexistence of people from divergent religions, races, and classes. His imperishable teachings will always be abided by us. The light in him, which is from the divine flame of truth and love, cannot be put off. We are the unfortunate victims of an unprecedented pandemic. which is playing havoc. COVID-19 has upended communities around the world, forcing unimaginable change in daily routines to recognize the fragility of life and exposing the deep injustice and violence. The impact of the pandemic is felt the world over, which crossed the political, geographic, economic, social, religious, and cultural boundaries, powerfully illustrating the reality of a global interdependence. We must act positively to convert this opportunity in improving world peace by way of practicing non-violence that will lead to a sustainable, better tomorrow. Let us pray God to give us a bit of courage that Mahatma Gandhi possessed to fight for what is right and aim to become responsible citizens to make the whole world a great place for peaceful living. Gandhiji is our past, he's our present, and also future. Many of his principles and ideologies that he spoke and wrote of, some of them far ahead of their time, and some are even more relevant today. Gandhi said there are 7 social sins. They are politics without principles, wealth without work, commerce without morality, education without character, pleasure without conscience, science without humanity, and worship without sacrifice. Gandhiji is the light of the world and an eternal hope for humanity. We sorely miss his presence in this world today. Let me conclude by quoting the inspiring words of Mahatma Ji. He said, "The world has enough for everyone's needs, but not enough for everyone's greed." Thank you. Jai Jagat.
Thank you, Damodaran. Thank you. With your wonderful experience in the Arab countries and internationally, you have put a very relevant message for all of us and the whole world. Gandhi is our past.
Yes.
Gandhi is our present. And
Yes.
Gandhi is for our future.
Definitely.
Let us believe that.
Yes, sir.
And also thank you for reminding the 7 social sins Gandhiji
Yes.
used to quote. And what is frightening is the society is witnessing, as you said, a degradation of Gandhian values.
Yes.
We have to arrest it. We cannot
Exactly.
continue to degrade it.
Right.
So let us all work together, and I am sure that international cooperation and solidarity will
Yes.
come to save the values and vision of Gandhiji. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Friends, now may I invite Dr. Geeta Dharampal. Geeta? Geeta is here? Hello, Geeta? Geeta Dharampal? Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Geeta.
Yeah,
Oh,
hello.
yes.
I'm here, but I'm
Yes.
only on audio because my connection is very unstable. So,
Okay.
but I am showing slides I sent you the PowerPoint presentation. I hope
Yes.
those can be shown so that
Yes.
at least you can see something. And I think the slides will compensate for the absence of my image. So
Okay,
please.
thank you. Let me introduce you to
can
the
you,
audience.
But I'm, yes.
Let me introduce you to the audience. Geeta Dharambal is a dear friend of the Institute of Social Sciences, and we work together. And she is the Dean of Research in Gandhi Research Foundation in Jalgaon in Maharashtra, state of India. And she was formerly with South Asia Institute, University of Heidelberg in Germany, and she is associated with various universities in India and abroad. I'm very happy that Geeta is with us today, and may I invite Geeta to tell us your message for the time.
Yes. Thank you very much, George Matthews. It's an honor to be presenting among such a wonderful array of Gandhian scholars. I feel truly humbled, but I'm sorry that I'm invisible. But I will compensate for this through by showing you some interesting slides. I hope this works so that you have the visual experience which relates more to Gandhi, and I think you can forego seeing my image, which would be very blurred, and then perhaps you wouldn't even be able to hear me. So I am talking about Mahatma Gandhi, the political healer. And I think this is quite a relevant time in the present scenario where politics does require a lot of healing. One wonders what Gandhi would have done today. Maybe by the time I finish my presentation, you will perhaps see and maybe be able to visualize or consider how Gandhi could inspire us today. Please, could you start with the slide presentation? The first slide.
It's coming. Yes. Yeah.
So you see the famous cartoon by Ranga on the screen. Ranga, that's N.K. Ranganath. And this slide, this cartoon that presents Gandhi as the father of the nation, was released as the Rashtrapita Gandhi Bharat map as a 3 rupee stamp to celebrate the Indian Republic Day in the 50th anniversary of Indian Republic Day on the 27th of January 2000. Now, as you see, it shows Gandhi and India, those contours of the map of India merge. There's a perfect symbiosis. And this represents Gandhi, who inspired the birth of the Indian nation, but also that he received his inspiration from the Indian people. For as he often said, he just gave voice to what was in the hearts of the ordinary Indians. And I think this is very important. Gandhi is articulating what he understands are the wishes, the thoughts, the desires of ordinary Indians. Now, the fact that Gandhi has his back turned towards us, to the nation that he fathered, is problematic. And maybe it's a troubling, painfully troubling aspect, which I have gone into at another junction. I won't go into this now, but maybe you can consider why Gandhi perhaps is not so satisfied with the nation that he fathered, in a way that the nation that came into being in 1947 and then 1950 was quite contrary to his deepest convictions. And so the epithet, father of the nation, is in a way replete with sad irony. But I would like to explain why I have used the title Gandhi, the Political Healer. I'm in the process of conceptualizing a book on this topic, and I think it is very important because Gandhi is known as as a reformer, social reformer, political activist, a spiritual guru, but this healing aspect has been ignored or marginalized to a certain extent. And I feel that besides the iconic lodestars that influenced his work with him throughout his life, Ahimsa and Satya, there are other two important concepts that he derived from the Indian Hindu traditions, which were equally important, namely Karuna, which signifies compassion in action. And this is because he recognized that there was a oneness between all living beings, in a way, all living species in our biodiversity, and therefore one should show compassion towards the suffering of one's fellow human beings and also take care of of nature. The other aspect that I would like to underscore is the notion of dharma. It could be translated as justice, as right conduct. And Gandhi was very concerned, like a number of the majority of traditional Indians are, with the right dharma. To one feels that one is of the opinion and convinced that dharma is what sustains the world. The third aspect that I would like to explain, elucidate, is that Gandhi was convinced that Indian civilization was basically sound. And this is what he expresses in his political manifesto, Hind Swaraj, in 1909. And he makes such an impact on people around him by his activities that the first biography that is written about him, that also published in 1909 by Joseph Doak, is called Mahatma Gandhi, an Indian Patriot. And Gandhi was a true patriot, not a nationalist, a patriot. And I think this is important. And so Gandhi sees the situation that India is in under colonial rule. He sees its suffering, and he feels that in a way it's a wounded civilization, similar to how V.S. Naipaul has described India in his famous book, A Wounded Civilization. But I think Mahatma Gandhi understands this slightly differently, because he says that India is being ground down not under the English heel, but under that of modern civilization. So it's not the British colonial authorities that are causing all this suffering to India, but rather the modern civilization that he considers to be a disease. And this disease has to be healed, has to be cured. India has to be cured of the effects of this disease. And this is where his political healing comes in, also because Gandhi is basically on a spiritual quest. He's in search of moksha, that's salvation, or the understand the unity with the Godhead. But he didn't want to achieve moksha while being a recluse in a Himalayan cave doing tapasya, but rather to achieve it through service to his fellow human beings. And this is how he understands his intervention in the political scenario to be to have an impact of healing, and to in the end lead to an alleviation of suffering, and also that his quest for moksha would also be perhaps be attained. But we are really interested not at the moment more with his political healing rather than his attainment of moksha. He was in he started his career as a political healer in South Africa, where soon after his arrival there in 1893, in May 1893, he's thrown off the train at Pietermaritzburg. Everybody knows this story, where, because he's sitting in a first class compartment and has a valid ticket, and he's deeply insulted, but he doesn't take this as a personal insult. He sees that this is part of a wider, what he calls as racial prejudice, but he calls this the disease of color prejudice. And his aim is to remove, to cure the European authorities, colonial authorities, the British and the Dutch, the Boers, of this disease of color prejudice. And this is, he goes about it in a very systematic way. In 1894 already, he co-founds the Natal Indian Congress, which is perhaps, he's influenced by the Indian National Congress. And then the Natal Indian Congress also influences the foundation of the APO and the ANC, the African National Congress. I'm just saying this because one often ignores the importance of Gandhi for African politics as well. And then in 1906, the colonial authorities, they pass a reform or an act which is called the Black Act, which is very, it's a discriminatory act, and Gandhi against Indian migrants, Indian immigrants to South Africa, and he wants to oppose this. He opposes this with non-violent means, and there is a big meeting at the Empire Theatre in Johannesburg in September the 11th, 1906. Please, next slide, please. Next slide. And here I would like to just emphasize that this first satyagraha was inspired by a Muslim's understanding of what the preeminent meaning of jihad is, namely an inner struggle with one's own conscience to arrive at the truth. And this understanding of jihad, which now we understand as the holy war, as terrorism, pure and simple, but Gandhi is influenced by a devout Muslim to understand jihad as a non-violent struggle with one's own conscience to achieve, to arrive at truth. And this influences, impacts on him to coin the word satyagraha, which also means a struggle, a striving to attain the 9/11 of 1906 and the 9/11 of 2001 are diametrically opposed. One is a non-violent jihadic satyagraha, which is synergized by the belief in Khuda and Ishwar, the Hindu concept of God, as a source of inspiration, whereas 9/11 2001 is the Frankenstein monster that is violent and creates more violence. So this, I feel, is a very important aspect that we need to take into consideration of Gandhi using his understanding of another religion, Islam, which he sees as the religion of peace and non-violence, to bring about to to structure his campaign of non-violence and non-violent protest, which he uses to mobilize the Indian community. Next slide, please. And this shows Gandhi, who's mobilized the self-assured community, represented by the smiling elephant with Gandhi perched on top. The steamroller, that's the governmental apparatus, versus the elephant. The elephant sat tight and the steamroller exploded. So with the resolute opposition, non-violent opposition and resistance of the Indian community, the Boer government just cannot do anything, is paralyzed. So this is the impression and the understanding that the British have of this the non-violent resistance movement being directed by Gandhi. And it's, as you see, it was published in the Sunday Times at the beginning of 1907. Then next slide, please. We should go quite quickly, otherwise I have 12 slides in all. Next slide. Yes, so this, when he leaves South Africa, he returns to India then, where, I mean, in South Africa, he's achieved quite a lot. He returns to India in January 1915, and within a few years of his return to India, there's a radical transformation that happens in the political scenario. The debating, the INC, which was really a westernized debating club, is transformed into a mass movement. He's able to bring about a transformation among the people. He brings about an indigenization of politics. People become more self-assured, they're less afraid. He introduces Swadeshi, the revival of the charkha. He brings about a reduction of discrimination against the Dalits, the emancipation of women, and especially the Hindu-Muslim unity, Hindu-Muslim friendship is greatly furthered by him. And this is done through movements of civil disobedience and non-cooperation by using his understanding of satyagraha. And this was a cartoon that was published in Kladderadatsch. This is a German, very humorous German journal, which is similar to the Punch. That shows Gandhi astride the Indian elephant again, leading the nation towards the attainment of Swaraj. And there you see his stature on the elephant, contrasted with the colonial police, who are puny figures. They just can't reach out. They are really ineffective. So this also shows the way he is able to bring about a healing in the political scene, the political constellations, and he is able to pursue this until then. The next slide, please. This is in the 1930s, with the he decides that there needs to be a big campaign after the non-cooperation movement, and that this is the civil disobedience campaign, the salt satyagraha, namak satyagraha, where it was an important decision and not a spontaneous. It wasn't an impetuous decision. He'd been talking about the exploitative nature of the British monopoly on salt since his time in London. He published his first article on this in 1891 in the Vegetarian magazine. And an important product. India was the largest producer of salt in the world, producing more than 1 million metric tons per year at that time. And then in 1923, the salt tax, the really exploitative salt tax, is doubled by Viceroy Redding. And so Gandhi feels that what is happening, the people who are really suffering from this, because the poor who do not have the means of buying salt, there's a salt deficiency, which also leads to the increase in the number of increase of leprosy, among other things. He decides on this salt march, which is a magnificent stunt, one could say, where he goes from Ahmedabad, from his ashram in Ahmedabad, to the Dandi coast on the Arabian Sea, and takes almost a month to reach there. He could have done it much faster, but it's bringing about a transformation in the rural population that he passes through. He spends nights in villages. So, and there he wants to bring, he says, I want world sympathy in this battle of right against might. This is his handwritten note that he hands over to a journalist in Dundee on the 5th of April, 1930. Next slide, please. Then Gandhi is imprisoned a number of times. Next slide. But after he returns from the Roundtable Conference, he's imprisoned by Lord Willingdon in 1932. But as you see, he's behind bars in Yeravda jail. Hardly has the key turned in the lock, Lord Willingdon turns round and he sees, for the one Gandhi behind bars, there thousands of little Gandhis outside. So Gandhi has mobilized, has inspired the population to continue with the struggle. This is also a political healing that is taking place. And the British don't know what to do with this. Next slide, please. They don't know how to handle this opponent. And Gandhi conceived of politics as a lot of you will have heard of his metaphor of the oceanic circle, and this is the context from which it comes. He's thinking of a decentralized order, political constellation. And he says, in this structure composed of innumerable villages, there will be ever widening, never ascending circles. Life will not be a pyramid with the apex sustained by the bottom, but it will be an oceanic circle whose center will be the individual in the community, in the village, from the village to the district, and so forth. So he feels that the least interference from the central government, the better. All important decision-making should be taken at the grassroots, at the panchayat level. For George, this is an important aspect. Of course, you know all the details, but he wants to bring about a new ordering of society. It's, in a way, a reinvention of the political order. Next slide, please. So Gandhi, after his assassination, and he influences a number of people around the world. One of them is Martin Luther King, who is a great proponent of Gandhian satyagraha and non-violence. After his death, after Martin Luther's assassination in April 1968, there's this nice cartoon that appears. It's full of meaning. With Gandhi sitting at the feet of Martin Luther King, saying, the odd thing about assassins, Dr. King, is that they think they've killed you. So although both of them have passed away, have been assassinated, their spirit lives on. And we see this in America with the civil rights movement, but in India too, with the Gandhian spirit still living on. That is what we hope. And it should be there should be a revitalization of the Gandhian spirit. I hope as a result of these webinars, this is going to come about. And please, next slide. I think what we need to do, if we want Gandhi's relevance to, especially to impact on the younger generation, then we have to de-fetishize Gandhi. You have the three monkeys: see no evil, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. But nobody said anything about blogging. And in a way, there are other cartoons where it says that Gandhi, if there had been internet during his age, he would have been the blogger of the nation, not father of the nation. We need to remove the straitjacket from Gandhi's, to allow him to impact upon our understanding of how politics should be conducted, how life in general can be more egalitarian, more just, more compassionate. Next slide, please. And what Gandhi left with visitors shortly before his assassination was this, what is called Gandhi's talisman. I will give you a talisman whenever you are in doubt, and when the self becomes too much with you, apply the following test. Recall the face of the poorest and the weakest man or woman whom you may have seen, and ask yourself if the step you contemplate is going to be of any use to him or her. This is also what a political healer is saying, that we should think whether what we are doing is going to have any benefit for the poorest of the poor. Please, next slide. And to improve the life in the rural landscape, he devised the constructive program. 18 aspects to it. It's getting late, so I won't go through it all, but it covers more or less all aspects of rural life. And this could inspire us as a blueprint for startup initiatives in rural India. Maybe, George, through your interest in panchayats, the constructive program that Gandhi started, and he wrote a little brochure about this in 1941. I think this needs to be re-looked at and to be rendered more dynamic. Next slide. Next slide. Yes, so we need to be inspired by Gandhi, feel that we have, that we should know what our own truth is. We know what our own autonomy is. We can attain Swaraj through our own efforts. So we have to be the change you want to see in the world. And this is by showing compassion, karuna, especially in times of corona, to our fellow citizens, and not look upon them as this social distancing should not be taken too much. You can have physical distancing, but not social distancing. And the healing aspect of our influence in society, for this we should derive inspiration from Gandhi. I think I will end here. I've probably taken too much time, but I thank George, Matthew, for being so liberal and patient. Thank you very much, and for organizing the showing of the slides. Thank you, and I wish the webinar all the very best.
Thank you, Geeta. I have no words to thank you. It's a wonderful presentation, and the slides were extraordinary. And as you said towards the end, we will be using this in our campaign to strengthen Panchayati Raj. panchayats in India. So this startup initiative is very important.
Yes, I would
And
like to join you in that campaign.
thank you very much. Let us do a massive effort for that. And passive resistance in the transfer, that is very important. And let us go forward. And once again, thank you. And we are working together. And this is in solidarity we are talking. uh, Friends,
Thank you very
now,
much.
thank you. Uh, Friends, we are 15 minutes late, and I am sure we would like to have a break. So may I request all of you to take a short break and come back after 15 minutes. We will begin at 11:30, and we have 10 outstanding, sorry, 5 outstanding speakers till 1 p.m. And I conclude this session by thanking all of you, and we will start again at 11:30. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George, and congratulations to you for organizing this excellent webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Mm.